Some days ago, I was talking to a colleague of mine who is also working in chip design, and we were talking about investment portfolio. And I mentioned ASML, and he was like, "Psst, who is ASML?" And I was like, "What?" They are supplying lithography machines for foundries like TSMC, Intel, and Samsung. These EUV machines, extreme ultraviolet lithography machines, are crucial for fabricating chips in the state-of-the-art technology nodes like 7 nanometer and 5 nanometer. And the thing is, ASML is the only company in the world which is capable of producing these super complex chip printers. Actually, the whole semiconductor fabrication industry depends on ASML. In the same way as chip makers like AMD, Nvidia, and Apple depends on TSMC. So, who is the true chip king here? ASML or TSMC? Who is the giant behind the curtain? Let's find out. You guys know TSMC. It produces chips for the largest chip makers like AMD, Apple, Nvidia, and Qualcomm. However, TSMC has its own suppliers, which they depend on. And chip fabrication process is extremely complex. It consists of 1,000 steps. But if I greatly simplify it, during chip manufacturing, the wafer is coated with a light-sensitive material called photoresist. Then, EUV machine shines tiny beams of light on silicon wafers to print nanoscale patterns all across the wafer. In the next step, areas exposed to UV light will be aged away with chemicals. These steps are repeated over and over again as different patterns are laid on top of each other to build transistors. This process is known as photolithography. For example, a modern CPU in 5 nanometers technology node uses up to 14 EUV lithography layers. The EUV machine is one of the most critical in the chip fabrication process. Such a machine enables foundries to manufacture smaller and smaller designs and to push the Moore's law forward. And ASML is actually building the state-of-the-art lithography machines for all the leading semiconductor fabs like TSMC, Intel, and Samsung. ASML is a Dutch company you might never heard of before, and I would say it's one of the hottest tech stocks in Europe. It was founded back in 1984, and first years it was not profitable at all. It was dragging behind Japanese lithography leaders of these types, Canon and Nikon. Initially, ASML was supported by European government as well as US government. Interestingly, Intel was one of the first investors. They bought about 15% of shares for about $4 billion. Later on, TSMC and Samsung also invested money in ASML. Today, ASML is valued at $329 billion, and it is the biggest tech company in Europe by market value. All the TSMC chips, like M1 Max chip or latest NVIDIA H100 GPU, as well as latest AMD's Ryzen chips. So all of these wonders were created using ASML EUV machines. The EUV machine itself is a great piece of engineering, and it is as big as a bus. It is built of over 100,000 different pieces coming from different suppliers. For example, the length, so the optics, are coming from ZEISS. Light source comes from Ushio. Such a EUV machine cost around $153 million, and the company is able to produce just 42 EUV machines in their most successful year. They plan on building 55 EUV machines this year and ramping it up to 60 machines in 2023. Till now, ASML built and shipped in total 143 UV machines. TSMC owns more UV machines than any other semiconductor fab out there. And obviously, lithography machines are nowadays in super high demand. So semiconductor foundries are queuing to get one. ASML has a monopoly here because no one else can build such great EUV machines suitable for mass production. This makes ASML absolutely critical to the entire semiconductor ecosystem. Now, what is next after EUV technology? At the moment, ASML already have a new version of EUV machine in a pipeline. This technology will enable 2 nanometers technology node and lower. These are high NA EUV machines. NA stands for numerical aperture, and this machine will be even bigger and more complex than EUV machine. It will cost nearly $320 million, but foundries, as you may guess, are already lining up for it. New machines will be featuring new optics design and will enable faster wafer processing. It will be capable of processing more than 200 wafers per hour, comparing to 120 to 175 wafers per hour throughput of the current EUV machines. The new version of EUV machines will enable printing of smaller chip features, like 1.7 times smaller, and almost 3 times increased chip density. In one of the next episodes, I would like to talk high NA EUV machines in more details, so stay tuned. However, the first high NA EUV machine is under development right now, and it will be available for the first setup somewhere in 2023. Intel is expected to be the first to get new twin-scan system for test setup. According to ASML, the next generation of EUV machines will be available for R&D in 2024. It seems it plays a key part in the Intel's plan to catch up or even take back the lead in semiconductor manufacturing in the next years. You know, Intel 20A process node is now planned for early 2024. So the timeline here matches perfectly. And obviously they can't make it without these new EUV machines. While TSMC is delaying the mass production of chips in M2 process node. Now it is delayed to the end of 2025. Now, who is actually the king of semiconductor world? TSMC or ASML? Definitely a hard question, but just fun to think about. I would say TSMC and ASML are like peanut butter and jam, soap and water. You know, they're better together, working to push Moore's law forward. For sure, lithography is critical. But there are a bunch of steps before and after lithography, like ion implantation, building interconnect between transistors, right? Packaging, testing. So there's a bunch of things to be done in the best quality in order to make this chip to work flawlessly. And good process equals great yield. As we know, ASML also supplies these same lithography machines to Intel and Samsung, but they cannot achieve the same great yield for 7 nanometer and 5 nanometer process nodes as TSMC. Because it's not only about lithography tools, there are much more tools, steps, and processes to that, and obviously at the moment TSMC is making the best of it. For sure, ASML is one of the most influential tech companies in the world, but to me, TSMC is the king of the semiconductor mountain here. They fabricate the most of the cutting-edge chips for desktop and mobile market, as well as for automotive. They have an amazing yield, below 0.1 defects per square centimeter for N5. So I'm a huge fan. Still, ASML is one of the most critical suppliers of TSMC, and other top chip makers. So they definitely deserve our credit and deep appreciation, as well as it deserves a place in my investment portfolio for decades to come. And drop me a comment below in which tech companies or tech startups you invest. Would be super fun to read. Thank you for watching, guys. If you want to support me creating these videos, the link to the Patreon is in the description below. Now check out another video on my channel where I explain amazing organic CPUs which are flexible and transparent and which can be printed on a paper, plastic, glass, or even your skin. I will link it here. Check it out. Thank you, guys. Love you guys. See you in the next episode.